FM News Talk 97.1.
On-demand audio.
It's important to talk about the debt talks and everything happening in Washington, D.C., but as I said during the last segment, when this happens, media tends to all cover the same thing, and another big story happening over in the Middle East in Afghanistan is going unnoticed. As you know, the president has announced part of his withdrawal strategy, and I'm really interested into how this is going to affect any gains that we have in Afghanistan. And my next guest, a very well-respected man. He's host of War Stories on the Fox News Channel, author of American Heroes and Special Operations, and he's the founder and honorary chairman of Freedom Alliance, Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, who's so kind to join us again. Good afternoon, sir.
Dana, great to be with you, and some great news today. Another Medal of Honor recipient from Afghanistan, in this case, Sergeant First Class Leroy Petrie, and we'll break news right now. You ready?
Yes.
Breaking news. Back when he was first wounded in 2008, Freedom Alliance, which you just kindly introduced me as the founder of, and I was the co-founder, you're absolutely right, and now the honorary chairman, flew his son from Brooke Army Medical Center, where he was a patient, very badly wounded, obviously, because I think anybody who saw what the president just awarded him in the Medal of Honor ceremony, he's got an artificial prosthetic limb on his right hand, flew his son from Brooke Army Medical Center to New Mexico, where he was staying there with his dad while he was in the hospital. And then last year, Freedom Alliance flew his son from Brooke Army Medical Center back to Washington and then back, which is the kind of thing that we do in our hero support programs here at Freedom Alliance. When one of those hospitals calls and says, we've got a wounded warrior that needs help, we help. So very few of us have a chance to get to know Medal of Honor recipients personally. I'm glad that Freedom Alliance was able to help him.
Oh, that's amazing, and just I love that you co-founded this, and that it's here for our service members.
Still around 20 some odd years later.
Oh, wow,
21 years later.
Wow, that's
still doing
amazing.
God's good work out there.
Well, that's awesome. The story of Leroy. I read about that actually. I read about that actually this morning on FoxNews.com. So that's a great story, and you gave me chills just discussing that. That's it's just very inspiring to hear of stories like that. I wanted to ask you as well, because I know you just returned from Afghanistan, correct?
9 days ago. Yeah.
Oof. How are we over there? I know the president has been discussing a withdrawal strategy, and I know that he says that, and you have a column out as well. And the White House, Washington, D.C., is trying to tell everyone, well, don't worry, because all of the troops that are being withdrawn, we're going to have over 70,000 Afghan police and military personnel ready to take their place. What is your perspective on this? Are we going to be somehow upsetting any gains we may have made over there with these actions?
Could well. And that's one of the things that increases the risk of what Mr. Obama's decided to do. I mean, he's pulling them out a lot faster than any of the recommendations that he received from the Pentagon or from the field commanders out there. And he's pulling them out in greater numbers faster than was anticipated. Now, the good news on the back end of that, and you and I talked after my last trip out there in November, if someone had told me last November that the Afghan National Army, the Afghan National Police, the local police were going to be up on the step and ready to take over, I'd have said impossible. Well, I'll modify that. I stand corrected. It's now possible, but it isn't there yet. I mean, we will have fielded by the end of this year another 100,000 Afghan soldiers and Afghan policemen who've been not only taught how to shoot, they've been taught how to read and write.
Wow.
Afghanistan has the fourth highest illiteracy rate on the planet Earth. One of the very few places that's worse is Haiti. And when you see the progress that's been made, it's been made largely because, as you probably know, Marines are not fond of saying nice things about Army generals. Let me just say, I would walk through hell itself in my bare feet behind Lieutenant General Bill Caldwell, who is the commander of the NATO training mission in Afghanistan. And he's the guy who said, we've got to teach these guys how to read and write before we can teach them how to shoot, before anything.
Right.
And so every one of those volunteers who enlist in the Afghan Army or who volunteer for the Afghan police gets sent to literacy training first. Because, I mean, you think about this now. If the 28% of Afghans total that can read and write, and that's probably a pretty accurate number. It might be a little bit lower, but the average literacy rate for young people, and I'm talking the age 17 to 25, is about 12%. And I was sitting in the back of this classroom watching an Afghan instructor with an American tutor teaching a brand new group of recruits, just like any other boot camp. They all got shaved heads, they're all in the same uniform, and he's teaching them how to write their own alphabet in Dari, which is the predominant language in the Pashto tribal areas, teaching them how to write the name of their country.
Wow.
I'm thinking to myself, well, why is it that they're so illiterate? It's because this 12% that can read and write in that age group are the graduates of the Taliban educational system, which said no school is a good school, particularly for a woman. And so you now have over 10,000 women police officers, almost 15,000 women Army non-commissioned officers and enlisted personnel, and about 1,500 women officers in the Afghan military, all of whom have learned to read and write because the United States military, and give NATO its due, there are NATO trainers there as well, but it was an U.S. Army general who said, we've got to do this.
Wow.
We've got to be able to train them. And so I would tell you that the future for Afghanistan is far less bleak today than it was even 6 months ago when I was out there, primarily because what this Army general decided we had to do and went and got the congressional funding for it. God willing, we don't cut them off like we did the Vietnamese back in 1975.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. That would...
yeah, it'd be devastating.
This, and this, too, this changes, it really changes the psyche of these Afghan police. Right. And there's, they honestly, they feel more empowered. And obviously, when you teach them something that the very government that said that they would represent them and protect them refused to do, that changes everything down right at the core.
It really does. It builds relationships, the likes of which will benefit this country for decades to come.
Wow.
And I'll tell you a little sidebar to this story. Once I went from their training centers down south to Helmand province, and it was embedded with a Marine battalion that is totally partnered with an Afghan Army and police Kandaks. And that's their word for battalions. And their battalions run about 600-700 troops in them, and the police battalions are about 500. And if you think about it, 151 of those cops get killed out there every month. About 57 soldiers get killed every month. I'm talking about Afghans. Every one of those ones that have been through the American training experience, where they learn to read, they learn to write, wears very proudly on his uniform a pen, because it sets him out as somebody. Oh, you know how to use that. You can write with that. You can read. Not only can they read law, but they can read signs. They can just about anything that's put before them, a training manual, a map. They can talk on the radio, call in air support, call in medevac support for their own people. And that kind of relationship that's been built primarily in the last year, but phenomenally since basically January, is absolutely astounding when you look at it. Now, that does not mean it's going to be easier because of what Mr. Obama's done. Right. What it means is it's going to be a tougher challenge because you're now going to have American units that are not replaced. 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines, it was announced last week, will not be replaced in Helmand Province when it pulls out. Now, the part of Helmand that they're in right now has been pacified largely, but there's still IEDs that go off over there. It's still a very dangerous place, less so than it was even 6 months ago. That's the good news. I just wish he hadn't made it so much harder on our people that have still got a job to do out there, at least through 2014.
Right, absolutely. Well, Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, we appreciate so much your service to our country and everything that you've done, and especially these reports from Afghanistan. This is amazing. It's fantastic. Make sure you check out Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North's War Stories at Fox News Channel and get American Heroes in Special Operations. And, sir, what is the website for Freedom Alliance?
FreedomAlliance.org, and it's right there in the back of that book.
Fantastic. FreedomAlliance.org. Thank you so much. We appreciate your perspective and
thank you, Dana.
your time.
Always great to be with you.
All right, take care. Thanks so much.